I am delighted to be joining you all. Clearly, you can see that I am not in Sweden. I am actually in Singapore on the research vessel, the Ocean Explorer. Behind me is one of our submersibles, Nadir. And I am so excited by what you all are doing there. I have had a somewhat circuitous career, and at the heart of it has been collaboration. And from what I've heard from Michaela and Andrew, you're about to have one heck of a collaborative week. So I want to take 20 minutes to talk a little bit about playing with data, and give you some advice for how I would approach this week if you are trying to have some new playmates to play with. So the first thing is, what is play? It's a word that I think most people really think they know what it means, but it's actually very hard to define. There's still academic research papers about what is play. And in English, which is my primary language, we use this word in many different ways. For example, you could play Mozart or play chess or play soccer or act in a play. Or you could play make-believe or play house or play with blocks. And for this talk, that's the type of play that I want to focus on. I want to stress that play is about process, not about outcomes. Play is when you let yourself do something in the moment, and it's not about having a fantastic project. It involves freedom of choice. If someone tells you exactly what to do, it isn't very playful. And play is often social. Now, there are ways to play a game by yourself, but for the week that you're about to have in Linköping, we should focus on play being social and playing with other people. So for many years, I ran a lab called the Playful Learning Lab, and I want to tell you a bit about some of the lessons we learned and how we go about bringing playfulness to any situation. And a big part of that is joy. So for background, I grew up in the United States, and this is me winning a science award. It is the last science award. I was 5, and it was because I grew mold on bread throughout my parents' house. They were thrilled. But after that, I was not a very good student. My grades were not fantastic. I love this picture because I know you are going to be spending a lot of time with data, and I still remember this project. We had to ask everyone in class how many pets they had and then draw pictures of their pets. I remember drawing all the pets, but I don't remember the math behind it. I always loved the idea of art and science coming together. So it was probably unsurprising that when I went to college, I was studying ocean robotics, which maybe is how I ended up here, but I was also spending a lot of time with artists. In the 90s, they weren't teaching engineering in US elementary and high schools, so I had to go get a PhD. And I got a PhD looking at how jellyfish swim. But the reason I finished my PhD was that at night, I would sneak off to art school down the street. And I wasn't a very good grad student by normal metrics. I would spend my days working on my robots, but at night I would do things like this. I'd be building robotics at art museum. They're trying to hold conferences for kids. And a key moment in my career was when I was approached 20 years ago as a graduate student by a sound artist who wanted to turn this data into an immersive experience with children's xylophones playing the data somehow. And so 2004, me with pigtails, grad student who was struggling with academics at the time, got to help Steve Roden, an incredible sound artist, build this piece. And this piece was premiered in 2004. And this was 2004 me. 20 years later, though, I had the chance this past spring to actually see this piece brought back to life. And it actually just opened yesterday in California. Sadly, Steve Roden, who I encourage all of you to look up, an incredible sound artist, passed away this past year. And our piece was actually just revived by a grant from the Getty. So it opened yesterday. I can't wait to hear it again. But this picture was meaningful to me because in the center is a curator, and he brought us all together 20 years ago. This is Steve's widow, sorry. And Steve treated me as an equal, even though I was this graduate student. I wasn't quite sure what to do with my career. And he encouraged us to really look at this data in a new way. And suddenly we would have this room where a sound artist and a young roboticist got to get together and imagine what ifs. So I hope that all of you this week in Linköping have a lot of what ifs. And those early what ifs 20 years ago really led to my work with the Playful Learning Lab. I ran this lab for the past 17 years and closed it. I've left academia, which is how I ended up on a ship. But I want you to think about these 4 topics this week. These are what we decided over almost 20 years. We decided were the key elements for collaborations and playfulness. The first one was the first one I learned, and it was because, I love this comic. I get sent this a lot. How can I do ridiculous interdisciplinarity? Well, when I was a young professor around 2007, I had to come up with a way to take a physics class learning about forces and turn it into something unusual. And what I decided was that swinging a pendulum was not that different than swinging someone on a flying trapeze. And spinning an object wasn't that different than putting my engineering students in circus equipment and having them roll. And we created this class where this was an engineering lab, but we did it at a circus. And the secret was my students had just as much homework as they would have had in the normal class. But I would come into the lab and they'd be laughing. Right. And so I noted as a young professor that joy, how do I make anything, even physics homework, joyful? So joy, right? And this led to serious research. So my university was happy. But joy, how do we bring smiles to new things? Well, when you're the professor that takes your students to the trapeze, they let you do other things. And a few years later, I had my first daughter, and I really wanted to teach her how to make electrical circuits. I was a roboticist, but I couldn't really hand this little child with the fairy wings. I couldn't really hand her a soldering iron. So we wanted to come up with a way to build circuitry for little kids. And what we realized was that if you've ever made Play-Doh, sculpting dough, you typically use salt and you typically use sugar. And we were actually able to make homemade Play-Dohs, one that was very salty and one that wasn't. And this allowed us to build circuitry that we could sculpt. So people start smiling when you bring out the Play-Doh. But this was another element. This to me was whimsy, right? If you think of an ice cream cone as joy, adding candy floss and sparkles, that's how we add whimsy. But when if you're the engineer who is playing with Play-Doh and working with preschoolers, you start to meet lots of fascinating people, just like you hopefully will this week. And as I was working for a few years on this conductive Play-Doh that kids could build circuits with, I met a chef, and this is Kate. Kate is a pastry chef, and Kate's looked at the recipes for our Play-Doh that could conduct circuitry, and she said, this looks like a recipe. It is a recipe. Could we make cake and icings that conduct electricity? So after many late nights, whenever we were in the same city, we were mixing recipes, trying to make conductive icing. And a few years later, not sure where this would go. It's about process, right? We said playfulness is process. We didn't have a plan in mind. We just knew that there was something cool here. We'd spend our nights and we would build some icing. And I was invited to a conference in Denmark, and it was called the Factory of Imagination. So we built this cake together, and it had buzzers that we could buzz, and it had wires, and it had edible domes that had light at them. And at this point, we had a recipe for play in our lab. We wanted joy. We wanted whimsy. We also realized that play is better when it's social, and we need new people. So that's how an engineering professor finds herself working with a pastry chef. But then there's a missing element. And the missing element we realized for play can be seen in this picture. So we built this cake, and it had buzzers, and it had lights, and it was all edible. But we didn't tell the conference organizers that it also would explode edible confetti. And I wonder, this is the conference organizers, if you can see the emotion on their face, right? I would say that emotion is surprise. And the fourth element for my lab's recipe for playfulness: joy, whimsy, new people, but also surprise. How do we bring surprise to everything we do? And surprise is something near and dear to my heart. I work a lot with magicians these days. And surprise throws you a little off kilter. When you are surprised by something, you take information in differently. And so surprise over the past decade became a huge part of my work and teaching. And my favorite surprises don't necessarily have to involve international pastry chef travel. As a professor, I taught the required, everyone must take it, Introduction to Design. And all of our engineering students took this class where they learned how to model things in 3D, and they learned how to work with clients. But it had a final project, and I can't explode cakes in my classes every day. But I realized that sometimes the best surprises are simple ones, and I just didn't tell them each semester what their final project would be. And so I would have dozens of engineering students, typically 20-year-olds, typically men, and the last project, they would come to school the day that we were launching it, and this would be waiting for them. This is an American school bus, yellow bus, and they would get on, and I would tell them that we were going to find the topic of their next project. But I would usually forget to tell them that the bus was already half full, of amazing designers. You can maybe see my amazing designers. They were 4-year-olds from the local school. And so my engineering students would get on the bus and find it half full with 4-year-olds. Because I found that working with children, when we did design, we were designing for a museum. And on our fact-finding mission for this project, we would have the preschoolers and the college students work together. Now, there was one embarrassing thing about this, which was at the end of the semester, we would present the work for our clients. And the preschoolers would also present their work for the clients. And unfortunately, we had quite a few clients who preferred the work of the preschoolers to my college students. Maybe it's because they're willing to be a little silly and they're willing to try new things, just like you will this week. So these 4 elements, joy, whimsy, surprise, new people, these can be found in all the work that we tried to do. And given the nature of some of the people you're working with this week, I wanted to just show you a few little projects. I do want to stress again that I'd be happy to jump on a Zoom call with any of you this week and chat. So if play is about process, not about outcome, play is joyful, play involves freedom of choice, and play is social. Well, how can we take data and how can we take music and think about things a little differently? And I was approached by a music group that wanted us to reimagine their concerts. And they were actually an all-male a cappella group. And at the time, all my coders were young women. And we worked with this group to create an open source tool called Code and Chords, which would allow us to create an interface that took in the sound, the volume, the pitches, and let you use those to basically paint. A few little... And maybe do this, where we could spin. And the speed would be based on the volume and the color. But it was just one of many. But at the same time, my lab was also working with deaf children, children who couldn't hear, children who were maybe deaf and deafblind. And we would do squishy circuits with them. And a TV show in the US approached me about doing an episode on our music project. And when they heard that we also work with deaf children, I had never thought to combine these projects. But this television show for kids, Sci Girls, said, well, could you use your music visualization project, but could you use that to teach deaf children how to code? And this was something that I would never have done. My lab was doing both of these projects, and I never saw the connections. But it was actually this TV producer who said, well, what if we combine them? And I want to show you a snippet.
Welcome to our Code and Chords production. We've been working on this in collaboration with the University of St. Thomas students. It's critical that deaf people have the benefit of visual aids to understand music better, putting us on the same page as our hearing peers.
Thank you for coming. We hope you enjoy the show. And now we'd like to call to the stage the Cadenza Singers.
Through our project, I feel like we were able to express ourselves to a larger audience, allowing our audience to understand that deaf people can create things along with music as a way to communicate.
I feel like I'm ready for anything. I could teach my family, other people, and generations to come who have never done anything like this. So I see this being passed on.
A lot of deaf people feel like they aren't able to appreciate music or have a relationship with music without sound. But this shows that you can.
I hope that they see like, oh, I could do this too. And that they would be able to discover the relationship between music and code.
So that was a pretty amazing project for us because I'd never seen the connection. I saw them as very different projects. So I've got a timer going and I know I have 5 minutes left. So I want to show you one other project. And I'm curious, do any of you know the rock band OK Go, the American rock band? Okay, good. Some of you do. Yay. Okay. So one of my favorite and longest collaborators, there we go. And this started with coffee. And I know you're just coming from lunch. I was having coffee at a conference, and the person in front of me in line was the lead singer, Damien. And I told him that I loved his work. And he asked me what I did. And I said, I work on unusual education projects. And he said, well, we should do a project together, which is quite a first introduction. But the band, since most of you raised hands, they've been known for their unusual music videos, be it in microgravity, be it chain reaction machines, be it treadmills. And I've been using these for years in teaching teachers how to teach engineering. So we launched together OK Go Sandbox. And this is Damien and I meeting with two teachers because we always had teachers involved. And what we strove to do was take the science and the art and the teamwork behind what the band does and bring it to the classroom. And over the past 5 years, we have created over 25 videos for classrooms where they explain what they're doing. They also come with teacher guides and ways for teachers to engage their students with the music videos, as well as science concepts or math concepts or teamwork concepts or art concepts. And I'd happily tell you all about these projects and show you some snippets. We've had the guys. I want to show you one particular project. When the pandemic hit, the band created a music video where they were all in their own homes. We decided that it would be great to find a way to invite the world in to do something similar. And first we put the sheet music for the song out there, but Damien and I decided in December 2020 that we would love to invite people to play with us. And we had this goal. We said, what if we could find 2,500 people, which seemed audacious. So we put out a call on the internet and asked people if they wanted to help us with the project. And we didn't get 2,500 people, which was unfortunate. We got over 10,000 people. So how do we involve 10,000 people in a music video? Well, we can't. We have to make 6. And what our team did was we hired young animators and we created animated films and then broke them into frames and mailed frames digitally or paper around the world and had people color them. Literally thousands were coming in and we could see classrooms around the world coloring. But it wasn't enough to just do the illustrations. What we decided to do was also do the music that way. And we released sound snippets. So these are my animators who were phenomenal to work with. We shared some pieces and we said, who wants to participate? And we got hundreds. We got people tap dancing. We got people banging on computers. We had people playing the hurdy-gurdy. And using these, we were able to, while separated, we were able to actually put together 6 music videos. And this raises a question, which is, who do you choose to play with? And I hope you all choose to play with each other over this coming week. One of the sweetest parts of that project for me, I have to say, was actually the person the band called in to pull together all this music. And I'm going to show you a little snippet to end on. But the person that we got to help us take all of this music from around the world and make it into something that sounded good was actually my childhood friend from when I was 10, right? The person I literally played with when I was 10, 25 years later was the person I ended up calling. And so you never know if the person in front of you in coffee is going to be your next collaborator, or the person that your kids are playing with are going to be the people they're scheming projects with nearly 30 years later. So I leave you, before I show you a snip of this video, with the rules we set in our lab, which I hope you follow this week, which are to be kind, to play well with others, and then to clean up your messes. We all make mistakes, lots of mistakes, but it's how we move on. And so what does it look like? And I have 1 minute, so I'm going to show you from the middle, but what does it look like when you have 15,000 people? Andy, Tim, Dan, you got
a few months later.
You guys get to do your own audacious collaborations this week. And I know you have an amazing next speaker, and I kept it to under 20. So I enjoy the week. I wish I was there in Sweden with you. And please do reach out to me. Email me. I'd be happy to hop on a call this week if you'd like to chat. Maybe I'll even show you the submersibles. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.